Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Fox 26 Sportstream. I'm Sal Manine with you again as we take a look at what's going on around the world of sports, especially here in Houston, as it's a busy weekend in the NFL. Not quite as busy as perhaps Texans fans would want it to be, since when the NFL draft starts, their team is currently not slated to have a pick in the first round. Also, we'll touch a little bit on the Astros, who have won 4 of 5, just got underway a few minutes ago with the Mariners. Scoreless as they head to the bottom of the first. Christian Javier just got through the first half of the inning as the Stros look to get back on track and get back above 500. But obviously the NFL draft is the big story of the week. First round starts Thursday night, then rounds 2 and 3 on Friday. Then everything else wraps up on Saturday. And it's not going to be until late Friday night that the Texans are slated to make their first pick. So if you're a Texans fan, you're going to be waiting around quite a while to hope to get some difference makers on a roster that looks completely different than it did not just a year ago this time, but even a few months ago this time when the season came to an end, obviously losing the big names like J.J. Watt, but then bringing in a slew of new free agents under new general manager Nick Caserio. But the draft is always the cheapest and most readily available option to try to rebuild your team, as that's what the Texans are going to have to start to do this year. And then everything that you're going to see on Thursday, if you're a Texans fan, take heed, because there's a good chance you will be going through that next year this time. Is that's where the Texans should hopefully have a first round pick if they don't trade it away for some inane reason yet again, and where they will likely be trying to draft another quarterback. Obviously, nobody knows what the future holds for Deshaun Watson from a football standpoint. Obviously, there's a legal process that still has to play out. Then there's the commissioner's investigation, whatever way Roger Goodell wants to adjudicate things with Deshaun Watson. Remember, even if no criminal charges end up being brought up against Deshaun Watson, it's still totally on Roger Goodell to elect to suspend Deshaun for any number of games, if not longer. We saw him do that with the Ben Roethlisberger situation years ago. So who knows if or when Deshaun can ever play football again, depending on what exactly does or does not happen with his legal case. And then when he does get the green light to be back on the field, is it going to be in a Texans uniform? Because the last we heard, before all the off-the-field issues that are currently being investigated and sorted out right now, it was Deshaun Watson no longer wanted to be a Houston Texan. And a lot of people thought that perhaps this week, if not Thursday, when the first round of the draft actually begins, is when Deshaun would be moved for ideally a bevy of picks if you're a team that is losing a franchise quarterback and has to rebuild. So that's why, again, if you're a Texans fan, you're going to have to possibly look for a quarterback, not in 2021, because you don't have a first-round pick. You don't really have any capital that you can move to try to get into the first round, and not only get in, but it looks like there's going to be 5 QBs taken in the top 10. So that's why 2022 is when Texans fans will likely be going through what a number of teams are going to experience Thursday night. So let's start things off with taking a look at what is in store for the Texans. Again, they're not going to pick until the third round. Pick number 67 is the first time that the Texans will go through and try to find somebody to add to their roster. 1 pick in the 4th round currently, then 2 in the 5th, 3 in the 6th, and 1 in the 7th. Obviously, once you get into those mid and especially the late rounds, a lot of time it's little more than taking a lottery ticket and hoping that you scratch it off and you find a winner, that you find not just somebody who can be a part of your 53-man roster, but somebody who you can continuously go to and possibly, best case scenario, we all know the story, of course, of Tom Brady and then other QBs, whether it's Tony Romo or Russell Wilson, late round draft pick. But at the very least, you're hoping to find somebody in those late rounds who can make a 53-man. So for the Texans, you're probably not getting a guy who's going to turn around a 4-12 team late in the draft. What do the Texans need, though? You could easily sum it up and say they need everything. Again, this team, outside of the quarterback play last year, struggled and was inconsistent in just about every facet of the game. There were times when certain units or certain players looked good. Then there were times where, if you're a Texans fan, you were going, they can't block, they can't defend the run, they can't defend the pass, they can't protect the quarterback. So really, you could look at just about any unit and say that that's a priority for the Texans. And especially when you're not picking until the third round or later, that's when you're probably just looking for the best available player, regardless of the position or what you need. But obviously, with the loss of J.J. Watt, they need to find some way to rebuild that defensive line. Shaq Lawson is a big name who they brought in, and they're hoping can regain his form and prove to be a disruptive force along that front seven, but you're still going to need help. Charles Omenihu looked good coming on as a young guy. You're hoping that his progress continues. Jacob Martin showed some strong abilities rushing the passer if he's getting more playing time and is on the field for more snaps, but you're still looking for help rushing the passer. And then if you don't have a pass rush, which that's something that the Texans struggled with last year, you need somebody who can cover in the secondary. And that's where the Texans, again, have thrown a lot of things at the wall, hoping something will stick, specifically at the cornerback position. And so until you find that bona fide number one guy who you can say, all right, I know on a day in, day out, down out basis, he's going to be able to lock guys down. That's another area that the Texans are likely looking at. And of course, the offensive line, it's been a story for several years now, being able to keep Deshaun Watson healthy and upright. Obviously, Laramie Tunsil, the highest paid left tackle in football, he's a big reason why the Texans are in the predicament they're in right now. But Laramie Tunsil is just one part of that offensive line, which has been rebuilt on the fly under new GM Nick Caserio. So don't be surprised if the Texans, especially since this is a very weird draft with everything that college teams and players have had to deal with over the past year because of the pandemic, guys opting out, some teams not playing a season or playing just a handful of games. So maybe some guys do fall to round 3 or 4 who the Texans had graded higher, and that's who they go after. Obviously, there's no DeAndre Hopkins again. Yes, Brandon Cooks came on strong at the end of the year, but now there's no Will Fuller opposite him. Randall Cobb dealing with that late season injury. So that wide receiving core could always use a boost. And then I don't think the Texans go quarterback. If they do, maybe it's a project guy late in the draft, but more likely than not, the Texans are looking into 2022 if they do end up needing to find a replacement for Deshaun Watson. Now, obviously the QBs are the big story of the draft. Everybody knows number 1 is going to be Trevor Lawrence, and number 2 is going to be Zach Wilson from BYU going to the Jets, and then number 3 will be a quarterback. It's just a matter of which one. Then there's still 2 other quarterbacks who likely are going in the top 10, top 12, 15, 16 maybe, but certainly 5 QBs going in the first round. And that's a trend that we've really started to see over the last few years, not just 1 or 2 QBs going in those first 32 picks, but 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks. But if you actually take a look at it, and for all the debating and all the posturing about Zach Wilson's overrated or why is Justin Fields falling, he's the second best quarterback behind Trevor Lawrence. Trey Lance just needs the exposure. If he played for a big school, he'd be higher. All the different QBs that you can find some excuse as to why they shouldn't be drafted high or why they should. There's going to be 2, 3, maybe even 4 or all 5 teams who are going to be disappointed. If you take a look at recent drafts and notable quarterbacks, especially taken in the first round, you will see that there is a lot of swings and misses there. Obviously, it's still too early to tell off of last year's draft or even going back 2 years. Joe Burrow looked great before he got hurt. Tua, was it a matter of coming off the hip injury and playing interchangeably with Ryan Fitzpatrick and then not having a real offseason, or were there red flags with his struggles last year? Justin Herbert looks like the real deal, but he was the 3rd QB who was taken last year. We never saw Jordan Love play in the regular season. And obviously Jalen Hurts, Channelview kid, it's still early to tell, as now he'll take over the reins in Philadelphia. But you go back 2 years, Kyler Murray's the only one of the notable quarterbacks who stands out that you go, all right, the Cards got it right there. You can count me in the camp of I'm out on Daniel Jones. I think I've seen enough, even going back to his days at Duke. I don't think he's the franchise answer. There's a spot for him in the league. He can be in your quarterback room, but are you really going to a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl with Daniel Jones? Dwayne Haskins isn't even on Washington anymore. Denver's made it known that they'll do just about anything to move on from Drew Lock. And then that's really the case when you go back year by year. I mean, 2018, if you look at the notable quarterbacks, obviously Lamar Jackson has an MVP to his name. Josh Allen looked like the best quarterback of that class just last year. And the Jets have already moved on from Sam Darnold, and Josh Rosen didn't even last 1 year with his team before the Cardinals decided they wanted to move on. So again, with 5 quarterbacks going in the first round, you can harp all you want about, nope, it's Mac Jones. Look at the numbers he put up this last year, leading Bama to the title. It's more than just having guys like Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith to throw to. You need that quick release. You need the athleticism or the speed of a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields or the complete package of Trevor Lawrence. A lot of times, just because you draft a quarterback in the first round or anywhere in the draft doesn't mean that, all right, you're set for the next decade plus, which is what every team wants whenever they do pick a quarterback, especially high. Of course, 2017 is one of those drafts that's, if it hasn't already gone down in infamy, it's going to be one that people will talk about forever because of Mitch Trubisky going ahead of Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. And then if you go back even further, just taking a look at the last decade of NFL quarterbacks taken high, Jared Goff obviously went to a Super Bowl, but then the Rams were willing to give away first-round picks to not have to pay him to play football for them anymore. Paxton Lynch, not even in the league. The best quarterback of the 2016 draft was Dak Prescott, who didn't go until 135. 2015, Jameis and Marcus Mariota went 1-2, and both of those guys are backups, or were backups last year. And now Jameis obviously with a chance to prove that he can be that franchise guy again, but it's not for the team that drafted him. And again, 2013 is another year where you look and you go, nope, none of those quarterbacks stick out or do anything or seem to have any value to the teams that picked them, let alone within the league still. And even 2014, Jimmy Garoppolo came within possibly one deep throw of winning a Super Bowl, but his team just traded up the 49ers to find his likely replacement. And then 2012, which Andrew Luck, obviously everybody here in Houston knows about him and his pedigree and how highly touted he was coming into that 2012 draft. And a lot of people say that Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, at least coming out. But then you look at the rest of that class. I mean, for one thing, you can make the case that Russell Wilson is the class of 2012. And yeah, with Robert Griffin, you never know if he doesn't get hurt, what happens. Ryan Tannehill needed a change of scenery, but Brock Osweiler just retired. Kirk Cousins, the Vikings have basically said they would have no qualms moving on or changing directions if they had to, if the right scenario presented itself at the quarterback spot. So this is all just to say that just because you end up with a high draft pick or you get stuck on a quarterback who you say, this is the guy, this is going to lead my franchise, doesn't mean that, all right, you're necessarily set. A lot of times there's a lot of swings and misses, and it might take several different iterations of first-round picks or second-round picks at the QB position. Certainly Texans fans remember what life was like before they were able to come away with Deshaun Watson in 2017. We do want to touch on, even though the Texans will not be featured on day one of the draft, barring something completely out of left field that happens that allows them to somehow move into the first round, there will be some Houston flavor in round one for sure, and definitely in rounds 2 and 3. Here's a look at just a few of the Houston area prospects who are going to hear their names called early on in the draft. Rashawn Slater, offensive lineman out of Northwestern. Some people think he could be the best tackle in the draft, but definitely one of the top O-linemen. He's going in the first round. It's just a matter of how high. Definitely a top 10, top 15 pick, a Clements grad. Jalen Waddle definitely going in the first round, the electric wide receiver and kick returner for Alabama. Remember, his season was cut short because of injury, but some NFL scouts think he may be better than his teammate from Bama who won the Heisman Trophy. Those two guys are definitely going in the first round, and it's just a matter of how many other Houston area prospects join them. Sam Cosmi from UT, an Atascocita alum, could he possibly sneak into the back half of round one? Joseph Asai, another UT product, Oak Ridge alum, had a fantastic career for the Longhorns. Definitely going, if not round one, in rounds two. I don't think he falls to round three. He has everything that you would want in today's game from an edge rusher. And then speaking of the defensive line, Peyton Turner stayed here in town after a great career at Westside High School, going to U of H. He's going in round two, maybe falls to three, but from everything that you're hearing from the scouts and reading, Peyton Turner is going to hear his name called likely fairly early on Friday. Walker Little, another Episcopal product, teammates of Jalen Waddle at Episcopal, played his college ball at Stanford. If he didn't tear his ACL a couple years ago, he's likely going in the first round, if not one of the first offensive linemen taken. And then Kyle Trask, who didn't play much at Manville because he was playing behind De'Aaron King and those great Manville teams. But when he finally got his shot for Florida, he proved he has the tools and he can be a successful quarterback. And he did it in the toughest league in the country. He's probably going in the second round, definitely the third. So there's just a few of the Houston area prospects who are going to hear their names called at some point in the NFL draft. So it's going to be interesting if you're a local fan, not quite so much on Thursday if you're a Texans fan, because your team does not have a pick because of everything they did, or better yet, didn't do in terms of roster management over the last few years. All right, we do quickly want to get an update on the Astros. The second inning just ended, still scoreless, as again, Stros hosting the Mariners, looking for their fifth win in their last 6 games, trying to get back over 500. All right, so it all starts Thursday night, round one. We know who's going 1. Seems like we know who's going 2. Number 3 is where all the intrigue starts. But if you're a Texans fan, unless they start making some moves, you're going to have to wait until late on Friday, round 3, when the Texans will make their first selection of the draft. We'll have it covered for you, not just the Texans, but all the local stars who we mentioned. Be sure to follow us on fox26houston.com, on our YouTube and Facebook pages. And as always, for all the latest up-to-the-minute news and updates, be sure to follow our sports director, Mark Berman. He's at Mark Berman, Fox26 on Twitter. For all of us here at Fox26, I'm Sal Manine. We'll see you again next week. Peace.